Well, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey, everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I'm going to try to see if I can record this thing here. Okay, I'm going to record this thing here. Currently, I do not have any membership or anything like that. I'm just going to do it. Bitcoin's making its all-time high today. Let's talk about it. If you have been a follower to this channel and if you've been a follower of mine on X, you should not be surprised by the fact that Bitcoin is making all-time highs. There are a lot of accounts out there recently that have basically said that Bitcoin has topped and what have yous. I just don't really see it based on my technical analysis that that's the case. And then now there are accounts out there basically saying that because Bitcoin's making an all-time high, and they've been calling Bitcoin topping, and they've been calling, Bitcoin's gonna go down from here. They're saying that technical analysis doesn't work, and fundamental analysis is greater than technical analysis. None of that makes any sense. I think it's not about the size of the equipment, it's about how you use it. And I just don't think that they know how to use it very well sometimes. I also make mistakes, but I also try not to be too absolute about it. But regardless, I just don't really see Bitcoin topping yet. A couple of things. One thing is if you follow this Gann chart, I've been literally following this Gann chart for months now, ever since 2024. It's been following some really great market symmetry here on this weekly chart. And as soon as I saw that it reclaimed the angle and it's breaking out the arc up here, a couple weeks ago, I really think that was just going to go up higher from here. Like it was pretty convincing whenever it ended up closing the week above that area. It was pretty convincing that I think it's just going to keep up going up higher from there. Right. On the daily chart, also been following up this scan here for quite some time, and you can see that it broke down underneath over here, back tests the arc down here for a long time, and it's been trying to push up this 45-degree angle. As soon as it broke the 45-degrry angle and the horizontal Gann support or resistance here and back tested support, I thought that was it. I don't know whether or not it's going to come back test the angle down here. It was going to do that. I think the last few days would have been a perfect chance to do that. Decided not to. It just decided to back test the horizontal Gann line over here, which is pretty important resistance levels here before previously, and decided not to do that. I just decided to just kind of touch the horizontal and not touch the 45-degree angle that spent a long time as resistance, and it just decides to go up. Hey, Bitcoin, if you can do whatever you want, if you decide to not touch my 45-degree angle for a broke back, if you will, then great, you just keep doing your thing. And if you're also looking at the 12-hour chart here, I've also shown here, look at things a little bit more of a granular way. You know how I love doing the Bollinger Band, and you can already tell that a big move is going to come a couple of days ago. Why that is because you had the Bollinger Band squeeze, because price has gone sideways over here for such a long time that you expect to have some kind of volatility either to the upside or to the downside, right? Kind of like how it squeezed before that led to a huge volatility to the upside and then went sideways for a very long time. And kind of like how it squeezed over here led to a lot of volatility to the upside, right? Here, same thing. And guess what? We have the Bollinger Band expansion here. It looks like it wants to probably keep riding up the Bollinger Band. How high does it go? Well, we'll see, but it just seems like it's not, Bitcoin's not playing hard mode. I don't know why a lot of people are trying to harden it. No, that's not what I meant to say. I don't know why people are trying to make it hard. No, that's not what I wanted to say either. But I think they're making it harder than it should be. And I just don't know why that is the case. If you're also looking at just the monthly chart here in general, I've been saying for a while now, if it keeps on finding support here on the Tenkan here, on the blue line here, it just doesn't look bearish to me. This is bull market behavior whenever it kind of stepwise ride up the blue line conversion Tenkan, whatever you call it. That's not bearish behavior, and you just had 3 nice wicks down here. You weren't breaking down. You formed a very nice Morningstar look over here. This is bullish, and you have followed through here so far, right? I mean, I don't want to talk trash because the month is not closed yet. You know, you still have another week and a half to go. But this is not a bearish look, just like this is not a bearish look, just like bouncing off this tank here is not a bearish look, just like this big giant bull trend here from 2015, 2017, whenever it just keeps on bouncing off the tank and on the way up. This is not a bearish look, right? You can keep calling the top, doing every single one of these bounds over here, like this is it, this is it. But it's not this generally not how bear market happens. Bear market happens whenever you end up having convincing closes underneath the Tenkan, right? Bear market happens where you have pretty convincing closes underneath the Tenkan. This is not a bear market behavior, and to call it that would be a mistake. Bollinger Band, upper Bollinger Band continues to expand here. 20-month moving average continues to be impulsively to the upside here as support. You can't really call it a bear market per se based on the way that it's looking. If you look at the weekly here, it really is giving you a a lot of market symmetry, very similar to previous expansion here, where you have Bollinger Band contraction here going for a long time because price went sideways here for more than 20 weeks. You have Bollinger Band contraction, and then it expands, and the price goes up along on one direction, decides to go up here. Great, continue to expand. Very impulsive move up, right? Bollinger Band contraction here because price has moved sideways for greater than 20 weeks. And you have expansion. Guess what? 20-week average pointing up. Price decide right up along the upper Bollinger Band. Same thing's happening here. Back test the low Bollinger Band here. Back test the Bollinger Band here. Back test the Bollinger Band here. Didn't really quite break down. Didn't really quite want to go down to that direction. Decided to break above the 20. As soon as it closed above the 20, I'm like, yeah, this is going to probably go up higher. And it's expanding now. The Bollinger Band is expanding now. This is a bullish behavior, guys. I don't know what else to really say about this. Are there I don't know how they do ads on live stream, but you know, hey, I would use the 0.5 cent per watch. I probably less than that. I'll take all these ad revenue or whatever. Welcome to everybody. Welcome Liv, welcome Ethan, Vasu, York. I mean there's the usual suspects, Vivian, Low Gains, Gary. Welcome JC. Welcome everybody to this brief live stream here. I'm probably going to go in about half an hour or so. But I just wanted to show that we are still at a resistance zone. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think that we are still trying to break above the current resistance. But I think that the major resistance have kind of already been broken. I think this arc already has been broken. I think it's going to probably grab up to at least 117 here. I think that the daily gain here has been broken. I think it's probably going to end up grounding up here to 120, right? Same thing up here. If you're looking at the monthly chart, I have a monthly Gann chart, and this arc up here has already been broken for many months and backtested for many months, and I think it's going to end up grabbing up here to the next level up here, which is going to be 200,000. Beyond that, if it goes up to the arc here, great. Where is it going to hit? I don't know, but I think eventually it's going to get up there. Probably going to find some resistance here at 200,000 though. I don't want to be too crazy. I mean, we still have a lot of resistance to break above before we get there. And this could very well still be a false breakout, you know, but I don't want to be too crazy here, although it did finally break above the 1.272 lock fib here. See resistance, resistance, resistance. And we broke, well, if it's not a wick, the month is not done yet. But you look at the weekly has really truly convincingly broke above the 1.272. Now, question is, where is it going to end? Is it going to get to 1.414 lock fib? Is it going to get to 1.618 lock fib? All these things are possible. These are resistance levels up here, by the way. All these are price targets, so we could potentially find some resistance there. You know, don't use locks, just use linear here. A very important fib level usually is 2.272, 137,000. The one after that is 2.618, which is 155,000, somewhere up there, right? 3.618 is a pretty interesting level because it's essentially 200,000. And that could be where, you know, it would find some pretty significant resistance if it doesn't find resistance down here at these particular levels. But it looks like Bitcoin wants to go higher. It just looks like Bitcoin wants to go higher. Um, I can keep talking about Bitcoin. I can tell you how I don't think that the monthly bullish band has really even gone through a proper bullish band expansion like it did the cycle before that and the cycle before that. You have a full bullish band expansion to the downside because of this impulsive move up here. You have a full bullish band downside because you've very, very much of impulsive move up here. We really haven't had that. So it's been kind of going sideways here for about 12 to 15 months or so, which is why you actually get a little bit of a bullish band contraction, kind of like very similar to here. You get a little bit of a bullish band contraction here, building a very, very solid base for it to potentially break out. And if it does break out, perhaps we're going to get something a little bit more impulsive here. The crazy thing is right now the sentiment is really not that hot. And if you talk to a lot of folks that are not really around here, they're not really that bullish on Bitcoin. Like they just don't care. They just don't have much interest in this here at all. So I don't think that we end here. I think there's actually a chance for this bullish band contraction here that leads to a bullish band expansion in price to kind of go up pretty significantly here, perhaps towards the end of the year. We will see, right? We will see. If you look at a couple other like quote unquote Bitcoin proxies, if you will, I mean, MicroStrategy is already doing what Bitcoin was doing. It already hit the upper Bollinger Band here 2 weeks ago, right, on the weekly. And Bitcoin hasn't really done that. MicroStrategy, even though it hasn't really done anything for about 2 weeks, it still looks bullish. It's still trying to break above this top zone over here at where the candles are, opening and closing at. I mean, it hasn't really touched this wick up here above, but that wick is a little bit too far extended of outside of Bollinger Band anyway. If you look at that particular wick, we already have mentioned that over and over again that that wick was touching exactly almost to the cent at the 1.618 log fib. And when it did that and backtested 1.272 log fib, trying to push through 1.4 and here, got rejected initially, and now you're pushing through. I think it's going to gravity up to the 1.618 in no time. It's probably going to go up there in no time, right? And the Bollinger Band is also expanding here on the weekly, so it's probably going to get back up there. I don't have any concerns about MicroStrategy in terms of whether or not it's bullish or not. It's about the Ichimoku clouds reclaiming the Tenkan Nikijin. It is also reclaiming the Tenkan Nikijin up here on the monthly chart. It's very, very clear that it backtested the 1.272 here after it got rejected 1.618, pushed through 1.4 here last month above the Tenkan Nikijin, and it wants to go higher, right? If you are looking at the 3-month chart here, which I've shown on X, on the Ichimoku, you can see how last cycle over here, we got rejected here at the Tenkan Nikijin, and it decided to come back down here to the cloud and backtest after it broke out over here. And right now we have reclaimed the Tenkan Nikijin on the red blue line over here, just been riding up stepwise, right? Because of this behavior, I think there's still room for MicroStrategy to go up, but it's just simply went up a little bit too far, too fast compared to relatively to the other stuff that is kind of lagging behind here a little bit. Now, if you also ask me if I compare MicroStrategy to like Coinbase or to miners, where would I like to be now in relations to the other, Bitcoin proxy or crypto proxies or whatever? I much prefer to be on Coin. I much prefer to be on Mara, Clean Spark, and whatnot, because I think MicroStrategies have run a lot. And I think you're going to have a hard time kind of push it up too far too fast because a lot of people are already in profits, and on the way up they're going to try to scale out, and they're probably going to try to rotate to other things, and that's just the nature of the beast. People like to take profits, and that's what they do. And right now they're kind of rotating into metaplanet. I think metaplanet at some point is also going to top, and money's going to rotate out of it. Where's metaplanet going to end up topping it? I don't even want to speculate, right? Because I don't even really have a good metaplanet chart here on the OTC. It just looks like it just went crazy, pushed about the 1.618 here. Where's it going to top? Nobody really knows. Is it really out of proportion in terms of what Bitcoin's doing? Yeah. It's the hype thing right now. Where is it going to end up being the top here? Well, Hard for me to say. I don't have much history here. The only thing I have is if you're basing off of the Japanese version of 3350 here on the Nikkei. Um, and I'm going to use the monthly chart here. And if you are, I don't even know where this fit level is coming from. Let me do, instead of doing that, I'm going to do the high up here. And I'm going to do the low down here at the all-time low is push above the 0.618 here, right? I think the next level it could grab it up to, it can go to 0.786. If it ends up breaking 0.786, then it has a lot more room to go above. But currently, I think that would be a good level to kind of, pay attention to in terms of resistance. It's still holding a technical kitchen. It's still got more room to go up. It's just like, MicroStrategy's got more room to go up. But you can see how the 0.76 is also right at the 3-month cloud up here. You're going to probably end up finding some pretty decent resistance up here. However, this correlates into the OTC version in the US, I don't know. It's a Japanese stock. You guys can, go back and do the calculations if you want to. I just kind of want to show you my thoughts here. I think it might end up hitting resistance up here at 0.676 here. Wherever that is, I don't know. Coinbase. What I think about Coinbase, maybe the chart here on X earlier, basically showing you that I think that we are hitting the final bosses up around here at this particular level, around 270s. I already mentioned around 270 is a pretty important zone because we spent about half a year getting rejected here. We spent about a few weeks to get rejected up here around 350. That's another level we got rejected over here. After this false breakout, decided to come back down here. I made a very beautiful W, like double bottom, whatever you call it. And we're trying to re-challenge this zone over here. Are we going to push through? I don't know. The reason why I don't know is because I'm not really seeing much volume here this week yet to tell me that we're going to push through. And it's still resistance. I think resistance, we're supposed to be a little bit more cautious. Can it come back down all the way down to trying to, fill some daily gaps and whatnot? You got a daily gap around like 210. Could it come back down and fill that? Maybe. Could it come back down to the 20-week moving average, around like 228, 230? Maybe, right? Could it go back down to the bottom of Ichimoku cloud around 230 like it did before, the time before that? Maybe. But right now we are at resistance, but it's got a beautiful double bottom kind of formation here. If we break about this 270 zone, I think this thin liquidity zone around 350 is also going to be able to be broken. And maybe we do a broke back here. Maybe we do a broke back here before going up higher. Regardless, this is still a pretty bullish chart because there's a big giant round at bottom here with a cup and a very complex handle here. That's a very nice, decent double bottom over here. So to me, I think once we break about that zone, it could go bananas and it could go on Palantiring. And if it decides to do Palantiring, then it's going to do some pretty crazy targets here, which I don't really even want to mention at this point, because what's the point to mention that it's going to go up all the way to some of these targets up here around 800, 1200, and 2100 when we still haven't broken above the previous all-time high, when we still haven't broken above these resistance levels up here. It could still go down and test some liquidity. If that's the case, I might end up getting more opportunity to buy more Coinbase. We'll see. But currently, we are still at a lot of resistance zone over here. So what's the point of me telling you that these targets could potentially be hit if we end up pushing through, right? Pointless. I don't have much to say about Mara. I think I did do like a Mara chart in here. I keep posting about Mara, saying this is a right-angled broadening wedge. These things are generally bullish. It's consolidating. It's at the bottom of the range. Whenever it's done, get back to the top of the range here, we might have enough volume to push through, but we don't have the volume yet. And we're still at a resistance zone over here. You can see how it got rejected here. We're entering the $16, $17, $20 resistance zone, right? A lot of resistance up here above, including Ichimoku cloud. This is the 2-week Ichimoku cloud, by the way. And the weekly Ichimoku cloud is a little bit higher, but regardless, it's still more or less resistance here, right? We just end up reclaiming the 20-week moving average here. And because of this reclaiming of the 20-week moving average, I think that we have enough juice to really push the upper Bollinger Band, which is also where the kitchen, the red line is located here. I think we end up reclaiming this. It usually goes up to the upper Bollinger Band. And it depends on how it reacts. If yes, we do have a little bit of squeeze here, we end up getting a little bit more impulsive and not having a Bollinger Band expansion, then it would really potentially break above this right angled broadening wedge. And if that's the case, we're going to end up having some pretty decent bullish continuation. Last night on the Triumphant channel, I kind of discussed the idea, and I was kind of showing some FIB retracements and FIB sequences level here to kind of show you what I'm thinking. I really do think that this is maybe a greater degree wave 1. This is a greater degree wave 2. And I think we're just starting like a very, very large and long wave 3. How long and fast and hard does it go? I don't think anybody really knows. I don't even think anybody really knows whether or not I'm correct or not, but I do think this is 1, 2, and then 3 is usually the most longest and the most powerful wave. I just don't know how high it's going to go. I just think that it's consolidated sideways over here for a very long time. It's been building a lot of energy. It's been lagging behind Bitcoin for a very long time. I think whenever Mara decides to keep going, it could. But, you can also say that, yeah, but you have dilution, it's being suppressed. And unless the people are, unsuppressing it and you don't know when that's going to happen, you might end up just having Mara underperforming Bitcoin the entire cycle, and this could be it. Although I don't think so. I think Mara more or less just kind of follow IWM liquidity, because if you're also, if you, I did this side by side here last night too. If you're looking at not Bit Digital, but you're looking at IWM, which is the small cap Russell 2000, they more or less correlate pretty well. I think that the last cycle, whenever Mara truly broke out, was in November 2020, and that was when IWM really truly made a big breakout and making an all-time high candle over here, closed all-time high, and just kept on pushing up. And that's when Mara was really spending the next 3 or 4 months really defying expectation, just kept going up and up and up and up, went all the way from like $6-7 all the way to like 40 or 50. Really captured a lot of people's imagination. A lot of people thought that was going to happen again. Whenever price went from $3 all the way up to 33, 34, the thing was just going to keep going. After it made like an 11x, right? But decided to go sideways over here to cool down, because this big giant move from $3 to $33 at 11x was way outpacing what Bitcoin was doing, which just made it 4x, right? So it decided to cool down here for about 15 months. And IWM also looked like it wanted to do a false breakout above the previous all-time high here, but it didn't really end up, panning out. Decided to come all the way back down here, make a crazy low with a big giant wick. Now it's forming a morning star pattern. These two spots over here, I think, are very, very similar. And if you're looking at the numbers, I think right now, Mara is kind of trying to challenge the 0.5 right now, whereas IWM is trying to challenge the 0.618. Is getting rejected here so far. But I think these two are very, very similar in terms of where they're at. And I think that Mara is probably going to end up following IWM liquidity rather than Bitcoin, because Mara also didn't really follow Bitcoin last cycle. It was followed more IWM than anything. But I don't even want to really talk about higher targets, because what's the point of me talking about higher targets when you can't even break out of 0.618, 0.786, when there is still a Ichimoku cloud up here on the monthly above, before you can even do anything. You got rejected here at the bottom of Ichimoku cloud over here back in November, right? And honestly, I don't think that these targets at 200, 325, or even 637, I don't think these targets are ever going to meet unless we break above the 0.618 and 0.786. And you see how important 0.786 is over here, right? Around $21, $22 is the top of the Ichimoku cloud, right? I can't imagine hitting these targets up here unless if you break above the monthly Ichimoku cloud. I just cannot imagine it being these like 200, 300, 600 targets without breaking the Ichimoku cloud, right? So yeah, let's not talk about that, because I think it's pointless. Clean Spark here, what you're seeing here it's been kissing and touching and caressing the bottom of the monthly Ichimoku cloud here for ages now. I'd say like maybe 5 quarters or something like that, right? There's only really one close, and that was a false breakout inside the Ichimoku cloud. And it's just had a hard time breaking above and decided to serve as very strong resistance here for over a year. right now we're re-challenging the bottom of the Ichimoku cloud here again, right? And I think that I don't know what's going to happen. If it breaks above the Ichimoku cloud here, if it ever decides to break above the monthly Ichimoku cloud, you see how last time also got rejected here as 176, right? If it decides to break through, and you can see how Mara and CleanSpark are basically the same chart, because the top of the cloud over here is also 0.76, right? I'm not even going to talk about these targets up here, $100, $160, $307. I'm not even going to talk about these targets up here unless the 0.76 got broken, right? Unless if the 0.76 over here gets broken, then I'm not even going to talk about these higher targets because it's pointless to talk about them, right? If you're breaking above 21 or the top of each one cloud, $21.79, 0.76 block fibs, $21.49. Break above that, then we'll talk, right? Break above that, then we'll talk. Real quick, CIFR had an offering, looked awful, right? Like it just looked absolutely awful. It just looked absolutely awful. What is going on with CIFR? Well, to me, it looks like it's over here. It looks like it's got a little bit of inverse head and shoulder breakout and back test here. Here it looks like you got a little bit of inverted head and shoulder and a back test here. So far, daily candle is green. I think it's an offering that people can't refuse. I think that it's just doing is necessarily consolidation. This big, like you remember how CIFR is outperforming everything this week, right? Oh, not this week. Yeah, it was outperforming a lot of things last week with this big giant candle that went from $3.20 all the way to like $3.08, 80 cents, right? And it decided to come back test a breakout zone. It's still about halfway of this candle. It's still an inside candle. The primary trend is up. So it probably is going to have some for bullish continuation. But because it went up so far so quickly over the last few days, come back test a previous breakout zone is not the end of the world, right? I can talk about like more targets and things like that, but again, the truth is, unless if it breaks above the 0.76, and if it breaks above the immature Ichimoku cloud here again, unless if it breaks about $7 and close a month about $7, there's no reason to talk about these higher targets up here around $42 and $71 or even $151. There's no reason to talk about that because you haven't broken above a lot of these important resistance levels up here above. Bitfarm's been extremely disappointing. It's basically broken down underneath a lot of zones here. Finally found support here, like here, right? Like that's the liquidity zone that they decide to go after. Now, what does Bitfarms look like to me? Bitfarms look like a downtrend like this, kind of like it did over here. Granted, you have a little bit more bullish divergence here. You don't really have any significant bullish divergence here for me to really truly believe in it. But if you're looking at a lower time frame, it's basically doing what everything else is doing, forming a little bit of inverted head and shoulder pattern over here. If you're looking at the bullish band here, you can see how the trend has significantly changed from a downtrend here for many months, decided to become an uptrend here, right? So it is reversing its trend, is doing what everybody else is doing. IREN is doing the same thing, head and shoulder. It didn't really have a right shoulder here, decided to go back up here to this liquidity range up here, and it's finding a little bit of resistance here, which is not unexpected, to be honest. You look at the monthly chart here, it doesn't really quite have the Ichimoku cloud here, so that's not really that helpful. It's reclaiming the 20-month moving average, so it's got a Morningstar look to it. This is a very bullish formation. It's trying to break above this horizontal liquidity zone over here. Support, resistance, trying to break above this zone over here. And if you are doing some FIP level, it's basically doing what a lot of other stocks are doing. You remember how CIFR is trying to break above the 0.76, was not able to, and that's kind of what IREN is doing. CIFR trying to break above the 0.76, not ready. IREN trying to break above the 0.76, not ready. Except IREN is becoming a little bit more impulsive here, is breaking about the 0.618 here, whereas CIFR is still having a hard time breaking about the 0.618. So I think IREN is probably going to end up getting back up here to 0.76 here in a speedier manner than CIFR. If you're looking at WULF, I just think it's just basically forming a channel on the way up here. ever really since like June 2022. It's been forming a channel up here, high highs and high lows for the most part, going back down to this horizontal liquidity zone over here. You can see how these miners are behaving in a very, very similar manner. I do think that WULF is still going to try to break about these fit levels up here. So maybe WULF's going to be a little bit slower, moving forward, but it's still doing what everything else is doing, right? BTBT trying to break about the 0.382 right now, getting rejected. So unfortunately, you have some pretty key resistance here. But if you don't look at the fibs, if you just look at the chart itself, this looks, you can either call it two ways. It depends on if you want to use these wicks or not. You want to use these wicks, then it might be like a broadening wedge, a little bit like a megaphone kind of pattern, which is basically just consolidation. If you decided not to do that, you decided to just do like a rectangle, which also would make sense here. If you decide to do a rectangle here, then it's just a bullish rectangle consolidation before going up, because the primary trend over here is up, right? What happened before that was up. I think it's probably going to keep on pushing up moving forward. Actually, let me go ahead and pull back the fit level. I'm not even going to talk about some of the higher targets up above here in the triple digits, unless if he even had a chance to break about 0.618 and 0.786, right? This is a very, very volatile stock. It's more volatile than the other miners that I just kind of showed you. So if it breaks above the 0.382, I think it's going to get to 0.5, 0.618 even, in a hurry, assuming this is a bullish consolidation pattern. RIOT, I don't have much to say about RIOT except that it's doing the same thing, trying to get pushed through this horizontal liquidity zone over here, and having a little bit of hard time doing it, but I think eventually it will. It'll probably get backed up to the arc here. You see how this arc was a resistance here for a very long time. We'll see when I was able to break through it this time. And it's been lagging when it comes to, fit level wise. It's haven't even broken about the 0.382 here quite just yet. So consolidating sideways for a very long time. So I don't have much else to say about it. HUD8 also trying to break resistance to 0.5. A lot of these are at resistance levels right now. Trying to break above, but it did break above the weekly Ichimoku cloud. That's promising. So once we break above this level, which currently we're having a hard time doing, you see how important the 0.5 level was. Once we break above the 0.5, then we talk about higher targets, right? Right now, I can really say is this is a channel on the way up, and most likely this is going to keep going up and form higher highs and higher lows. But that's all I can really say right now. CORZ, I don't have much history because this company went bankrupt. They came back, and it decides to really moon from when it first re-IPO'd, and it had a pretty significant correction here. Right now, it's making a V-shaped recovery here. Look at a monthly chart. Looks like we got two candles trying to reverse this bearish March candle over here. See whether or not we push through and get to the 2.618 here. But we're getting close to resistance here too. So CORZ is also doing its thing. Now, I can talk about Doge. I can talk about everything else, but I will probably leave things be for now, because you knew that Bitcoin is still trying to get above this resistance zone over here, right? I can talk a little bit more in a granular sense in terms of what I think overall altcoins are doing. I think altcoins are going to do just fine, because if you look at the daily chart, if you look at the Bollinger Band, that really illustrate that this downtrend over here, where the 20-week moving average is kind of pointing down as resistance, is clearly over. And it's clearly flipped the 20-day from resistance here to support, and the trend is now up, right? You can have a lot of volatility on the way up, and that's okay. Ethereum is basically showing you the same thing, right? Downtrend, uptrend. Uptrend now is extremely impulsive. Doge is doing the same thing, Shiba is doing the same thing, right? Bonk is doing the same thing. Pepe is doing the same thing. Avalanche, if it ever pulls up, is doing the same thing. ADA is doing the same thing. Chainlink is doing the same thing. AMP is doing the same thing. XBAR is doing the same thing. XLM, again, the inverted head and shoulder pattern backtest, doing the same thing. Solana doing the same thing. Cody is a little bit underperforming here, but Render is doing the same thing. It's a little underneath, but it's basically changing its trend from downward to upwards, right? Fetch AI doing the same thing. Cup and handle back testing that zone, right? I mean, I can talk about these individual altcoins, but overall, I think they're going to do just fine. And I don't have much else to add to that. I think right now the all-time high sentiment was a little bit too heated to decide to kind of go back down. And a lot of things like I did not expect today, and I do not expect this month because I was just showing you how things are at resistance. I do not expect CleanSpark to break above the monthly Ichimoku cloud today because it's at resistance. I did not expect that. Anybody who's expecting that, I think, haven't learned a lesson over the last 15 months. I still think it's going to take time. If it breaks above, great. If not, that's okay as long as it keeps trying, right? We'll see what these miners do. We'll see what Bitcoin does. I still don't have high hopes that they're going to end up just pushing through until one thing happens. And this one thing I've been eyeing for a very long time, it looks like it might be happening this week, is for IWM to close the gap on the weekly. The gap would get closed here at the price of $202.74. Once this gap closes, I think we're good to go. You have a weekly gap here on the indexes here too on SPY and QQQ. That does make me uncomfortable because whenever SPY and QQQ goes down, sometimes IWM gets dragged down even further. And for the indexes to have these kind of open gap here is kind of unusual on the weekly. I do think that these will get closed at some point. I just don't know whether or not it's going to be this week or is it going to be like 4 or 5 years from now. I don't know. I've been looking and see if there are any weekly gaps here that hasn't been filled, and I couldn't really find any. I think all these weekly gap eventually gets filled, and I've yet to really see like a weekly gap that hasn't really been filled. Somebody mentioned they actually backtrack like a weekly gap for spies all the way that still opens all the way back into like the 1970s. So I would find it unusual for SPY and QQQ to just leave this gap here, open all this time. I'll be very surprised if it ends up doing that. But if IWM is able to close the gap here around 202.74, that would be great news. So we'll see. I mean, I don't know what news came about and, everything's just started plummeting here just now. I don't really care because I think, technically speaking, this is actually not unexpected, right? Because you are getting rejected here on the weekly Ichimoku cloud here on IWM, and you have a gap down below, so closing the gap actually would be completely logical. And right now we have a Wednesday afternoon dump after Bitcoin just made its all-time high. That's the kind of dichotomy that you're dealing with here. So, as treasury yield continues to push higher, blah blah blah. I mean, I think that the whole thing about treasury yields, that's not really like a reason for anything to happen. I think treasury yields are not really a cause for anything. I think these are chartable, and I think that they are just going to keep doing what they're going to do, right? I probably shouldn't use lock scale for yields here, but looking at the 2-year yield, and I'm probably going to go soon, but looking at the 2-year yield, I still think it's extremely weak. It's just riding a lower Bollinger Band here. I think that it might be at a very similar spot as it is over here. I don't know. It looks like the next lick probably will be down. You do have a little bit of the bullish engulfing candle here, so maybe it ends up going back test the negative sloping 20-month moving average, but I just don't really see it being a big problem, right? It got underneath the Tengen here. Right now, it looks like it wants to rise above the Tengen. Maybe it goes up a little bit higher and get rejected here again, but I think eventually it's going to touch a cloud. 10-year yield's been a little bit tricky here because it's getting back to a resistance zone up here above. After it's finding support here from the Tengen Kitchen. But the Tengen Kitchen is also been tightening, right? This is an uptrend. This is a potential change of the uptrend because the Tenkan Kijun are no longer expanding. So I don't really feel like yields are going to be higher for longer. I don't really feel that. And yeah, you did end up breaking down underneath the 20-month moving average here and end up reclaiming here with a bullish engulfing candle here so far. But again, the month is not over yet, and you're going back to the resistance zone up here, even for yields. So I'm not sure if I would look at this and say that the stock market is plummeting because of yields. I just don't really understand that logic. I did not expect Coinbase to really break about this resistance zone today or this week. I did not expect that. I did not expect Mara to break about the 0.5 today. I did not expect the CleanSpark stock to break into the Ichimoku cloud today. CIFR just had an offering and got rejected here at 0.618, right? Bitfarm's having a hard time breaking above this horizontal liquidity zone. IREN's having a hard time breaking above this horizontal liquidity zone. WULF is having a hard time breaking above this horizontal liquidity zone. Your BTBT is having a hard time breaking above 0.382, right? I think RIOT is also hitting some resistance. A lot of these things are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm not that concerned as long as these things are explainable by technicals and as long as the monthly chart look like this, right? I had a video the other day on Monday talking about the morning star pattern. It's been seen here on IREN, WULF, BTBT, RIOT, HUD8. CORZ have a little bit of that. BitDeer has a little bit of that too. Yeah, so these are pretty powerful bottoming pattern. Look at Mara. Last time you had one of these morning star pattern was here. Price went up a lot higher after that, right? Last time you had an inverse of this as an evening star pattern was the top over here, and you went down, it then down pretty drastically after that, right? The time before that, morning star pattern over here at the very, very bottom, right? Time before that, here is a morning star pattern. Didn't really work out very well, but still pretty decent bottom. So yeah, these things are underneath resistance. They're pushing resistance. They're trying to push through. That's why things are having a hard time going through. It's not because of yields. Anyway, guys, gotta catch back to reality here. I'm gonna have to come back to it later. Maybe I'll do a video 2 or 3 tonight for free. I might do a Chinese stock market video for Danny's Patreon later today because I like to talk about the Chinese stocks. Nobody's talking about them anymore, so I think it's probably time for them to run again pretty soon. And as long as the Chinese market is forming higher highs and higher lows, I think Bitcoin would do the same. I think alts and miners will follow, and IWM will also follow eventually. With that said, when are you going to close the gap? I know you want to, right? So just do it. All right, guys. back to you. I cannot recover from the mystic from last night. The one thing that I said would forever be legendary, and I hope I don't get demonetized for it. Anyway, guys, take care. Have a good one. I'll catch you on these non-live videos at some point later this week. Bye-bye now.